Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
When I was 5, I asked for a dead body for Christmas. When my parents asked why, I said I wanted to play with it. Yeah.
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
So my son had an imaginary friend named Arlo. He had mentioned him before, so I was pretty aware of him. I just wasn't sure if it was like a child or an adult he was referring to, and he really wouldn't elaborate. So I told him that he needed to tell Arlo he needed to go home, to a different home. He then proceeded to tell me that Arlo doesn't like mommy, after I told him to tell him to go home. I'm a pretty firm believer in the spirit world, and we had just left the children's ER, so I was pretty sure he just took something home with him. So we were going through a grave site, and he goes, "Arlo's not here anymore. Mommy, he's waiting at home for you." Mama. I'm sorry, what?
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
So my daughter, who is now 7, she's an only child, and I'm her dad. So she's bound to be a little bit weird anyways. But one time when she was just over 2, she's looking out the front window and she goes, "Mom, there's bad guys out on the front porch." And my wife's like, "No, there's not." And my daughter goes, "Yeah, because if there was, my dad would shoot him." And my wife just kind of laughs and she's like, "Yeah, if there was any bad guys, your dad would probably shoot him." And my daughter goes, "But how would we clean him up?" And my wife's like, "What?" And my daughter goes, "We'd probably need 2 shovels." That was the day.
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
So not my child, but I used to work with children, and I had this one kid. He was very sweet, only to me. Everybody else, he was kind of a little terror, but I loved him. And I had to pick him up early from school one day, and his teacher basically reported that he broke another child's nose. Mind you, he's only 5. He's only 5. How are you breaking somebody's nose at 5? But this is what he told me. I asked him why. He said the child took his toy. So I'm like, why break his nose instead of just ask for it back or get a teacher to assist you? And he's like, well, I wanted to kill him, but I wouldn't have had enough time to play with my toy for the rest of recess if I killed him. So I just broke his nose. And I thought that was a good decision because the alternative was,
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
So unfortunately, I'm the psychopath. I'll let my mom tell you why.
So when I told Olivia I was pregnant and that we thought we were having a little girl, she gave me this picture. The son is sad, she's sad, and she's sad that there's a baby in my belly. Then she drew this picture and said, "Mom, what are you doing? Killing me?" And there's a gun there. And now she's happy because she wants to kill, and there's no baby in her belly anymore.
The son is sad, though, still. Wow. It's all because they just didn't want a sister. Thankfully, Liam's a boy.
Were you nervous that I was a psychopath?
Not at all.
Dad, were you?
No.
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
So I'm trying to potty train my daughter, who was 3 at the time, right? Well, I'm telling her that she needs to go to the bathroom. And she's getting mad because she doesn't want to go to the bathroom, And so I'm like, "No, you need to go to the bathroom. And if you go to the bathroom, I'll give you a sucker, okay?" So this freaking child walks in the bathroom, pulls her pants down or her pull-up down, and pisses and shits on the floor. And then she looks at me, dead ass looks at me, and she goes, "Huh. Now you can clean it up, Mom. Where's my sucker?" That was the moment.
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
One time, Vivi was staring off into space, and I asked her what she was doing, and she said, "Just think about the endless night."
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
I was just putting my 4-year-old son to sleep. It's in the dark. He's drifting off to sleep. Looks at me through the slats in his little crib. It's like a half crib because he's growing up. And he looks straight in my eyes and he says, Paddington is dead.
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
When my son was in kindergarten, they had the class fish, and one day my son waited until the teacher's back was turned and he slipped to the front of the classroom and dumped over the tank of fish and started stomping on the fish in front of the entire class of kindergartners. So of course the school called me to come and get him, and when I arrived, the sped teacher looked at me like he had just seen the devil himself and told me that when he asked my son why he did it, my son looked him dead in the eye, no emotion, and said, "I didn't like the fish, so they had to die."
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
I don't have any kids, but I'm lucky enough to have a boyfriend who has 11 other siblings, and just, statistically one of them has to be a serial killer, and that one just happens to be one of the younger boys, probably, because one time we were just playing outside, having a good time, and he found this toad, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Darla, how many legs does a toad have?" And I said, as far as I know, 4. And he picks it up by its little arms and he pulls. And he said, "Well, this one has 2.
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
So when I was a kid, I would play fireman, and what I would do is turn the shower up all the way hot and then walk through the blistering water and pretend that I was walking through fire to, save lives.
Maybe he got a real knife, and he chopped people's head, and he drank it out of people's head. Blood.
You drank blood out of people's heads when you were a baby?
Tell me about the time you realized your child might be a psychopath.
So literally when my daughter was 3, the second she was able to say full sentences, she told me that in a past life, she used to cut people's heads open and take the tops of their skulls and drink their blood out of it. And then one time my wife and I were reading her a story in bed and she started to fall asleep, and then all of a sudden she opened her eyes real quick, shot up in bed and stared at both of us and just said, in the creepiest voice I've ever heard, "Disembody me." Where did you even hear that? We were traumatized. She hasn't done anything weird since then, but you never know. You never know.